Hello,
Hello,
and welcome back to our podcast.
Cinema Affairs. Your name is Mimi.
And your name is Sophie.
Oh my god, crazy!
And today we're doing an episode with our Oscar prediction.
We're gonna tell you everything that we loved and the ones that we didn't, and also we're gonna tell you what we think will win Best Picture. And most importantly, we're gonna tell you who we think was snubbed. And I think the entire internet is on our side.
Yes,
Yeah.
totally agree.
Okay, let's get started.
So, because our idea is not very original, people do these Oscar predictions all the time. We've actually seen this post last night from Hollywood Reporter, and they posted their Oscar predictions. But apparently, it's like a mathematical model that takes into account industry awards, critic scores, and betting markets that decided who is most likely to win the awards. And the first one on their list is Anora.
Amazing. I love Anora.
And I have not watched it. And I would very much like you to tell me what it is about and why it should deserve to win the Oscars.
So Anora is the story of this sex worker who one night in the club where she works, she missed the son of a Russian oligarch. They go on, they kind of fall in love and they get married. And basically the whole film shows us what happens once his parents find out about this marriage. They're very mad. They fly back to America to get this marriage annulled.
It sounds promising.
It is promising. I will say that is definitely more of a social caricature rather than an actual love story once you actually get to see it. But it is definitely Sean Baker's style and it showcases social classes in a very unique way, I would say.
I honestly love this current of caricatures. I hope I spelled that right. I started seeing so many of them, and I feel like it's the best way to portray society without offending anybody.
Exactly. Someone will always get offended either way, but I feel like it's a more digestible way of actually looking at society. So I don't know if you saw a lot of movies from Sean Baker, but his whole idea when he makes movies is that he's trying to destigmatize the sex workers community in general.
What movies did he do before?
So probably the most known one is the Florida Project that's done in a very similar way in a sense where it's done from the perspective of the children of the sex workers.
Right, sounds very interesting.
It's very interesting. It's very childish in a sense, but as an adult who watches the film, you understand how heartbreaking in a sense is.
I want to watch that.
It is amazing. I would highly, highly recommend you see it. But going back to Anora, he brings back the same spirit in this one. And I love the fact that you can sense his stamp on it. You know that it's his movie. Something else that I really like the way that he made this character Annie, because Annie, even though, stereotypically speaking, she is working for money, like she sells her body for money, but the whole idea about her is that she cannot be bought. She does whatever she's doing because she wants to. And you can see how much of a spine she has and such a strong backbone when, for example, the mom of the guy that she married, she's kind of trying to make her feel bad about her choices and she's kind of trying to almost buy her. And you can see that she's not doing that. She's not taking any of that. She is independent and she is strong and she doesn't care.
Do you think it deserves to win the Oscar?
No.
No.
I think she did an amazing character, and I love her for Best Actress. I love her. I know how much time she put into this character, how much time she put into understanding the community of sex workers, of understanding even how to move her body in a way that a sex worker would and a prostitute and a stripper would, because it is a very specific thing and a specific skill to acquire. And I saw her talking about this. I know how much she worked on her accent and everything. I would definitely consider her as a very important contestant for a Best Actress, but I don't think Anora would take Best Picture, in my opinion, even though I know he's the first contestant.
Right. The next one on Hollywood Reporter's list is Conclave.
Please tell me about it because I have not seen it.
Conclave is a political movie about the death of the Pope and the conclave that follows after his death.
Fascinating.
Honestly, I went to the cinema with this friend of mine and she fell asleep during the movie.
No, I'm sorry. No.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting movie if you are super into politics, but I didn't find it very interesting. I think the ending was indeed very intriguing and
Okay.
unexpected, which I loved about it. I would not take it as an Oscar nominated movie when I would like walk out the cinema, but I get why it was nominated. I think it had a lot of wise moments.
Okay.
And it's an interesting reflection of how even God's people have morality issues, and how power matters in every single layer of the society, even where it shouldn't. It's this game of who's gonna win somehow the next title of the Pope. It's a very logical decision to choose this
Yeah.
particular Pope, but because he's got this biological issue, this biological issue that I'm talking about is that he's got both organs.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And then can he be the Pope if he has a vagina?
Very political. I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But besides that, I don't see anything special about this movie. I'm so sorry about that. But there are a lot of movies that have wise dialogue. And I think this movie had wise dialogue, but like nothing so striking that I would want to write down and reflect on, if that makes sense.
So I will make a wild assumption and I will say that you don't believe this one should win Best Picture.
I no, definitely not. If you can fall asleep watching it, it's probably not worth.
I mean, well, that's based on person. That doesn't mean everyone will fall asleep while watching it.
I think it's if it's the best picture of the entire year, no one should fall asleep watching it. Literally no one. I mean, it should be appreciated. Okay, if not like at least appreciated in like cherished way.
I'm gonna say that I know a lot of movies that have been very widely acclaimed and people didn't really like it. You didn't like La La Land, who was
Right.
a masterpiece in the beginning. Like, you didn't like it.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
So
You have a
I'm gonna
point.
say that the beauty lies in the eyes of the watcher. But I think that obviously not everyone will like everything.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That was a wild assumption of me.
And that's okay.
The next movie we're gonna be talking about is Sophie's favorite in terms of discussing Emilia Perez.
Oh, man, you made me so happy for a second there.
She thought I was gonna mention the Brutalist, but no.
Oh my god, where should I even start from?
You should start with the description we found on IMDb about it because it has to be described in some way and we just couldn't.
It's undescribable. So I am going to read this because for the life of me I could not come up with anything. Emilia Perez follows three remarkable women in Mexico, each pursuing their own happiness. Cartel leader Emilia enlists unappreciated lawyer Rita to help fake her death so that she can finally live authentically as her true self.
So, first of all, I would say this is not about three women. This is about one woman.
Yeah, and honestly, it's not even about Emilia. Like, I don't think she's the main character of this film. I'm not gonna lie.
I think the director is the main character, honestly.
Yes,
He made the story about himself.
he made a story about whatever was in his mind based on absolutely no research whatsoever.
That's the feeling that gave me. That
Yeah.
it gave me as well.
My main problem with this film is that at the end of it, if someone asks me, what is this film about? I have no idea. I don't know what to tell them because I feel like it's so all over the place. It's so underdeveloped that at the end of it, you just don't know what to tell someone. I don't know what I watched, what was supposed to come out of it, and what was I supposed to like learn or take with me.
It did not have any message to send, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know what.
It's like they wanted to be in the whole LGBT movement.
Yeah.
But not like they didn't commit to it. They didn't want to like send a message about the LGBT community. They just wanted to be part of it. It's almost like it's just the most pick me movie I've ever seen.
It's fascinating how they managed to offend so many people with this movie. The entire Mexican community, everyone is so pissed with them for the way that they portrayed Mexico City and Mexican people because it's just so stereotypical, so not true for this day and age in a sense, and there is so much more to discover about them that was I don't think even think he thought about showing that. Like, it wasn't. Do you know that the film was shot, most of it in France? It wasn't even shot in Mexico.
It honestly didn't even give the vibe of Mexico.
Yeah,
Like they tried with that whole scene in the beginning, but
do you know what the director said? He said that for the feeling and the shots that he had in mind of how he wanted Mexico City to look like, Mexico City wasn't enough. So that's why they shot everything, well, almost everything in France.
and that's why people got offended.
Absolutely. And then with the whole trans community, I saw this really interesting article that said, like, this guy said that Emilia Perez is done from such a white man cis perspective.
Right.
Like, it definitely was not consulted with trans people and, talked about, okay, how can we make this actually right?
Can I read you my notes about Emilia Perez?
Please read me your notes.
I'm honestly ashamed to read this out loud because it's very undeveloped, just like the movie. But here
Honestly,
we go.
go ahead.
Cringe and annoying from the beginning. How did this movie get an Oscar?
We're all asking ourselves that.
Yeah, hospital scene is insane. Excuse me, but what was that?
That was the most terrible part in what was this?
A musical.
In a musical that I've ever seen.
I cannot even say this because it's not fair to say this about so many people working on this production. And I know how hard it is to make one. And I'm so sorry to be judging it so harsh, but like,
I'm not.
the movie was so bad. And not only like the music of the movie.
No, it was terrible. I'm sorry, I don't understand how Wicked and Emilia Perez can stand in the same category.
Yep.
And both of them be considered musicals. It's just my mind cannot wrap around
Right.
that thought.
Same. And we're going on with the movie notes. Too much singing, interesting plot. Selena's dancing moment is just not it. After making the news multiple times as a drug lord, now willingly appears on TV as a hero, people would recognize her for sure. And I stand by that. It's
Yep.
like, are you for real telling me that this criminal disappears for 2 years and then comes back as a woman and no one notices that it's the same person?
And my problem is that with the transition, it was like she was reborn and everything that she's done terribly in her past just, they're not there anymore, which is not
Exactly.
the case. That's not how it happens.
Exactly. And like, she suddenly is this good person that wants to help people. Like, that just doesn't happen, you know?
I'm not gonna lie, it's fine to want to atone for what you did. That's fine. The problem is that she's acting and they made the movie to make her look like, oh, she's like a completely changed, amazing, like angel of a person. That's not how it works.
It's just like not a valid character. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
whatever made that person become a drug lord is not gonna go away once their sex is changed.
Yeah.
I think the story was just written incoherently.
If this one wins Best Picture, although I don't think they will do it to themselves, I feel like after all the backlash that happened on the internet, they kind of get the idea that it's not that they're gonna be canceled, but they're already struggling with viewing, like with viewers on the Oscars night, and they should know that if they do this, it's gonna just plummet.
That's why I'm just like,
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. Anyways, let's move past this because
Yeah.
like my day has become a lot worse now that we talked about it, and I need to make it happier.
totally agree. The Brutalist.
Oh my god, I'm so
Yeah.
happy. I'm so happy.
We both watched The Brutalist. It's a 3 hours and a half movie. Slow burn, but beautiful.
It is hard to put in a few words what The Brutalist, that's, as you said, 3.5 hours is about, but I'm gonna try. So The Brutalist is about this Hungarian and Jewish architect who survived the Holocaust and flees to America in search of a better life. And that's where his life is gonna be changed forever by this very wealthy and also mysterious client.
Would you say it deserves to win the
Definitely,
Oscar?
definitely.
I didn't even finish the question.
Yes, the Brutalist is the most cohesive film I've ever seen in the past 5 years that has been nominated at the Oscars. And I stand by what I'm saying.
I honestly loved Adrian Brody playing the main character in this movie.
I loved him. I thought he was amazing.
I loved the cinematography of the film.
Yeah.
I loved how the production design looked like. I just kind of pretty much loved everything about The Brutalist besides the fact that it was 3 hours and a half. So, what is brutalist architecture? I will say it in a few words, and hopefully, I'm gonna get it right because I've never been passionate about architecture or like stylistic concepts, but I did learn a bit about it.
We believe in you, Mimi. Please tell us.
Okay. So, as Google says, brutalism was associated with socially progressive housing solutions. Basically, when you say brutalist building, you want to say just a building. That's what progressive housing solutions stands for. But came to be seen as overpowering and cold, which I totally agree. Brutalist buildings are very ugly if you don't think of the higher purpose they were made
Yeah,
to look like that.
if you don't know where they're coming from, like why they are the way they
Have
are.
you ever noticed that the National Theatre in London is a brutalist building?
No, not up until this moment. I did not.
I've always thought, oh my god, how ugly this theater is. And I've never known why it is so ugly until we discussed it in uni. And my teacher said that it is made to look like that because the brutalist current is about making buildings look just like buildings. And I think the whole movie, it is based a lot around that.
The way that I characterize this movie when I got out is a movie where every single person that worked on it, from the DOP to the director to the production designers to every single one to the editor, they were making the same exact movie and they were committed to it. Because when we just talked about the brutalism, right, like the current, you can see that in every single choice of this movie. First things first, you can see it from the cinematography, how you can have really, really wide takes, the way that the brutalist buildings are very tall, and then you can have really close-ups, like extreme close-ups and extreme wides, which is definitely in tone with the buildings. And then you can see it in the editing. Again, you can have really long takes and then very snappy cuts, which are almost weird when you look at them. But then when you understand the style that they were going for, you understand how well they just committed to it. And I think that was the reason why I loved it so much, because it just feels cohesive.
It's a very well made movie.
Yeah. And yeah, that's why I also think it should get Best Picture, because it was amazing from the story to the execution to the final product. And it's not always that you see movies who are so committed from the beginning until the ending.
There were two things I didn't like about this movie. The fact that it was that long, which I kind of get because stylistically it made sense.
Yeah.
And another thing is that they approached men rape in a very light manner, as if it was just a side plot. But a man who is raped doesn't take it as a side plot. It will probably define a big chapter of his life, and I think they didn't.
They didn't really go into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that was one of my problems with the film, that the first part, there's an intermission, right? The first part felt so well developed in a sense, and they gave it time to breathe and for everything to, like run its course. I cried twice. I found it insanely just emotional. And then the second part felt a lot more rushed.
Right. I think they kind of got scared because they were like, "Oh, we cannot make this movie
5 hours, yeah.
But I'm not sure if I'm right about this. They could have probably made it a short series. They would have missed a lot of opportunities by making it like a limited series, but it would have probably been a bit better developed.
I think they would have had the chance to go even more in depth than they already did. But I'm gonna be honest, I love the fact that the director actually went into this and really stood his ground, because a lot of, like, he talks in interviews how a lot of producers told him this is too long. Nobody will sit in that cinema room to watch almost a 4-hour movie about an architect, like about, not even
A
whatever.
real one. It's like
yeah, exactly. It's not even a real
story.
one. And he was like, you know what? No, I want to make this movie. This is what I want to make. I believe in this. And man, that person is my hero. I love the fact that he was so passionate about his art and he believed in his vision so much.
Well, to be fair, if this movie was not nominated for Oscars, I would have probably not watched it because I would have got scared of the 3 hours and a half, and I would have been like, "Oh, you know what? I'm good without this." But
I think it's definitely a film that initially, film people are very passionate about, because I think I was very curious to see it from the beginning. Honestly, the fact that it was so long, I was like, okay, I want to see it, even if it's shit in the end. I'm curious to see what they wanted to say in almost 4 hours. But I am so happy it got the nominations that it did and the recognition, because that way a lot more people who maybe are not that much into films actually went to the cinemas and sat there and enjoyed it.
Right, I completely agree. Another thing I want to mention about The Brutalist, and that's the last thing, and one of the most important things I've noticed about this movie, is that it followed a very real storyline, which I love, is the thing I love most about movies whenever I see that the story is cohesive and real and you are not questioning the plot. Because if I'm watching a movie and suddenly I'm starting to question the plot, then
Yeah.
it's just like not it for me. And I loved how when he first flew to America, he started exploring his sexuality and went to the prostitutes. That was a very weird scene for me, and I kind of liked witnessing it. And then I loved how they pursued with his weird sexuality throughout the movie and made me feel uncomfortable.
What do you mean his weird sexuality? What do you mean by that?
He was such a normal man, portrayed in such a normal way, and it never looked attractive to me for 1 second. And I think that's a very raw portrayal and real of sexuality in general. And it felt weird for me because I'm used to watching movies like Baby Girl or 50 Shades of Grey or I don't know, other sex related movies which are showing the main character as a very sexual person, a young person who you would probably feel attracted to without even wanting to be attracted to because they're generally attractive. And this person was just a normal person having normal sexuality in a, you know, normal world.
I would say, like, something that I would want to say based on that is that I don't feel as much as he was experimenting with sexuality as much as, for example, when he came to America, he was under the impression that his wife died. And that's when he goes to the prostitutes because, he's under the impression he doesn't have a wife. And even there, he's not able to have sex with them. He's, I felt like he was very committed to his wife.
And the moment when she came to America and they were almost having sex, and she said to him, I was here with you the entire time. I saw everything you've seen. That was so powerful because I believe people who have a real connection can feel what they are going through at the same time,
I
even
get
if
that.
they're not together.
Yeah.
And I love to see this realness in a movie.
And I think they committed to this realness because, she came back and it wasn't like everything was sparkles and great and pink and whatever. You see how they rebuilt their relationship because they have been apart for 8 years. And obviously, even though you love that person, you have to rebuild that intimacy between you and that person. And I love the fact that they just committed to that and they committed to showing a real relationship that has struggles, and even though you love that person, you just don't know how to be with them from the start.
True. So, highly recommend The
Highly
Brutalist.
recommend it. If it doesn't win best picture, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
You know what? I'm gonna take a second and say this because it needs to be put out there. I think the movie who should win this year's Best Picture is Nosferatu, and I was very sad that it was not even nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah, I was very sad as well. I don't know why Nosferatu didn't get all the nominations as well, because it was an amazing movie. It was definitely snubbed. I don't get it.
And definitely better than The Substance if we're talking about genre, because they were both
Yeah,
horror movies, and honestly, Nosferatu, such a beautiful image,
amazing.
beautiful storyline, acting, just everything was perfect about
Yeah,
Nosferatu.
it was an amazing movie. It was so well developed. It committed so much to the genre and the story. It was so well researched.
Yep.
Amazing movie. And yeah, Lily Rose Depp, she did an amazing character. Honestly, it's actually impressive
It's her best
given.
role, definitely.
Yeah, definitely her best role. And she's really young. Like, definitely her best role, but she's like, what, 24? Isn't she my age?
I don't know. She's, yeah, very
Yeah, she's
young
very young.
and very beautiful.
And it's insane that she actually managed to pull it off.
Yep. So the next movie on this list is A Complete Unknown. A Complete Unknown is a classical stardom story about Bob Dylan's life, rise to success, and obsession for music.
Amazing. Do you want to tell me more about it?
I don't even know where to start with this movie. It's definitely my favorite, and I think it should win Best Picture this year.
Okay.
I loved Timothée Chalamet's performance. I felt like he was in the character. He became one with Bob Dylan, and I can see that in his most recent appearances on TV. And I love that about him. I saw this in an interview. He prepared that role for 5 years.
Yeah. No, I
How
saw that.
that is so beautiful and special when an actor feels so much like he should become one with the character he's playing. And I was so amazed staying there in the cinema and looking at his expressions. Like his facial expressions were so genuine.
He was really good. I really appreciated that. And I think for me, for the complete unknown, his character, like his performance was the best thing about the movie. That's one of the reasons why I think it shouldn't win Best Picture, but he is one of the best competitors for Best Actor because it is insane how well he mastered his role. Including, I was listening to Bob Dylan music, and then I was listening to Timothy Chalamet's
Covers.
covers. It's insane.
Also such a good score.
Amazing
It was
score.
so enjoyable to
Yeah.
listen to this movie. And what I loved most about it was probably the chemistry he had with both his girlfriends. They were not both his girlfriends, obviously. One of them was. The other one was kind of a mistress that he was meeting with every now and then. And I think that describes an artist so well.
I'm not gonna lie, he didn't seem fun to be with.
No, but
No.
that's exactly how artists are.
Some of them. I wouldn't put that on
Yeah.
everyone, but he was definitely the epitome of the artist who cares most and foremost about his art, and everything else is on the second place.
I've never seen that in a movie before, but it was like this man was possessed by his art. That was so powerful because I felt like that so many times. Like, art should be the number one thing in my life, and that it should owe me.
I get
You know, like I should be owned by my art and only express it and like make that my first priority in life. And I've always been scared by how much the art I have inside me could take over my life. And I think his character just lets that art possess him.
I also think if you see him in terms of just, sociological speaking, he is definitely more of an introvert. Making art and sitting in his own place in his head is definitely a lot more comfortable for him than social interactions with people. But because he's so good and he's so talented, and obviously he has something to say, everyone is just in awe of him, if that makes sense.
I also love the storyline. I think it was so cohesive, and it started with him being this poor guy passionate about music, and he is a beautiful character. And he develops into this person who is haunted by everybody around him and seen as a trophy, but he still doesn't care. He's this nihilist that sees life so simple and doesn't care too much about really anything.
Yeah.
And he emphasizes this at some point where he talks to Sylvie and he tells her, well, do you really think these things can define you? And I thought that was so powerful because we are so blind sometimes. We live under the impression that some things like our job or like our roles in this society could define us when really nothing can define us. We are just human beings.
Yeah, that's true. I thought I liked his character, obviously, and I liked a few more things about the movie, but I think one of my reasons why this isn't best picture material for me just the story felt a bit repetitive, and also, in my opinion, it felt a bit underdeveloped. Like, I feel like I saw him coming to New York, right, in hope to learn how to be this great musician and affirm himself. But then you don't really get to spend that much time with him understanding how he writes his music. You see a bit of it, but then every single time he goes into writing is just him after having sex with someone in the nighttime, just being crouched over his desk trying to say something. And you don't really see, because obviously all of his songs are very, some of them are romantic, but a lot of them are very political. And even though we get a sense of what was happening politically speaking in America in those times, you don't really see how he gets affected by it, and then he gets the idea how to write it. Like, I feel like that part, that bit that's so important for his art and music could have been a bit more developed, and me as an audience, I could have gotten a real taste of what he felt when he was putting down his thoughts.
I think this movie is more relatable to people who are artists than to normal people, if that makes sense. If I mean, what is normalcy anyway? it makes more sense to people who are artists than to people who are not
Yes
artists.
and no, because like I consider myself an artist. I know how the entire creative process of writing something and making up a story and everything works. And even as someone who does that, I would have loved to see how his process works, because I don't know, maybe I would have learned something more from that. I would have learned how to apply it into my own life.
I don't necessarily agree.
I get that, and you don't have to. I think this is just something that I observed, and then after coming out of the movie, I got to talk about my issues with other people as well. And also, I'm very happy that I got to talk about this with people that are in film, and they said the same thing. This guy is in film, and he also does music, and he said that he doesn't like to look at any music biopics because he feels like they're all underdeveloped. Although I don't agree with that. But with this one, I know that that was one of my main problems. It just, at some point, it felt repetitive. And the thing that kept me in my seat and I loved so much was just because I was fascinated by Timothée Chalamet. For me, it was so interesting and his character so fascinating. And just looking at him and seeing his micro expressions was so fascinating that I just wanted to be in that seat. But in terms of story wise, I had my fair share of comments.
I'm just gonna say two more things that I found very powerful
Please, please.
about this movie, and I think it was his relationship with John. His relationship with John on screen was so beautiful in a way and like so relatable because they were so strongly connected by their passion for art.
Yeah.
And I found the moment when they were singing together on the stage so powerful because I think it is like that. When you have a passion in common with somebody, that passion will make you fall in love with each other
Mm-hmm.
somehow. But that passion is just not enough for you to be a couple.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he loved Sylvie more than he loved or cared about John. But Sylvie could see that she could never have what he has with John.
Yeah.
And that was heartbreaking to her. And I felt like a fly on the wall during that entire scene. And I loved it so
It was
much.
heartbreaking. Honestly, it was so sad. I felt incredibly sad for her.
Yeah, me too. And another thing that was very powerful towards the ending of this film was how this artist was very relatable in the beginning, and people used to love his art. And he was relatable because he started as being just like the other people.
Yeah.
But as the movie progresses and you see he develops into this wealthy person, even if he doesn't really care too much about wealth, he starts to change and his art starts to change. And he doesn't care about his audience, he only cares about his art. And you see how he wants to do his art, not what people want him to do.
I will say though, in terms of audience, I don't think he didn't care about audience. I think he didn't care about what the producers and the people who were managing him wanted. Because what I feel happens is that he goes to New York and folk is very in trend in a sense because it's a very political type of music. And he goes with folk, but then as he develops and as he matures as well, and also as the trends move on, he realizes that he would love to experiment with other music genres as well. So he goes to do that. And I think people really loved that. But the problem was that when the old folk people would ask him to come back, he didn't want to come back just to be likable by them. He wanted to come back as the person who he was, who he truly was, and what he believed in. And I love that about him because he was staying true to himself, even though he knew that it will make a commotion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful story. Loved it.
That's your contestant for Best Picture.
Yeah, that's my prediction.
Okay, we're gonna see.
Okay, the last five movies that we're not going to talk about, but we're going to briefly explain what they're about because we're running out of time already, are Wicked, The Substance, Nickel Boys, Dune, and I'm Still Here. I personally think Wicked is probably the best movie out of all these 10, just because it's a huge production and it was perfect from the beginning until the end. I have nothing to say bad about it. Elphaba a young green woman is ridiculed for her skin, and she befriends this popular girl named Glinda or Galinda.
A Glinda.
They are both studying witchcraft and wizardry, I think, at the University of Oz.
Yeah.
And this story is related to the original story of the Wizard of Oz, but it's independent of it. So if you don't know anything about the original story, don't stress it. It's
Yeah,
not
you
going
can
to
watch it.
affect you in any way.
I will say though that if you do know the timeline beforehand, this is very interesting. It brings a lot of understanding as you're watching the movie as well.
True. And if you don't know the timeline, you can just go on TikTok.
Oh yeah, definitely, 100%.
And you'll find out about it in seconds. It's as easy as that. It is a beautiful coming of age story, a musical also.
An amazing musical. I'm sorry, such a well-made musical.
Honestly, after I saw this movie, I started listening to the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's so cute. Like, popular. I want to be popular.
I didn't know you had such a nice voice, by the way.
Oh, really?
I had no idea. Well, I
Oh,
never
didn't
heard
even
you sing.
try. Should I try it again?
Oh my god, yes.
Like, are you gonna pick me for some, I don't know, future movie?
For the next one, definitely. I'll put a good word for you.
Okay, thank you.
I liked Wicked a lot more than I expected. I didn't even want to go to the cinema for this because I expected it to be very just, made for grabs in a sense and not be developed in any way. And then I watched it at home and I got so annoyed that I didn't get to go to the cinema because I think that would have been an experience with the level of productions.
Yeah, me too. I would have wanted to watch it at
Yeah.
the cinema. So if you haven't watched it yet, it's probably out of cinemas already.
Oh, that's really sad.
Yeah, and I cannot wait for part 2.
Before we move forward, I just want to say one more thing for the people who have not seen it. But even if you saw it, this is a really good trick. When I saw the beginning act of Wicked, something interesting to me was that even though the words were happy and, it's great that the Wicked Witch of the West is killed and everything, the melody is just really sad. And what I that stuck with me throughout the whole movie. And basically when I finished the movie, I went back to listen to the main track, to the main act, and it had a completely different impact on me. And I even felt like the word wicked meant something else. So highly recommend, if you've seen the movie or if you are going to see it, at the end of it to just go back to the main act and just listen to it again, because maybe it's just a me problem. I just felt like that, but honestly it changes it completely.
I actually said it's the best out of all of them. Even if I want a complete unknown to win, I think Wicked is the best.
Really?
Yes.
Insane. No, I think the best out of everything is The Brutalist. 100% definitely. I think a very close contestant in terms of story and how well and cohesive the whole thing was is definitely I'm Still Here. And I definitely understand why the main actress is nominated as well as the best actress, because honestly she did an amazing role. So I'm Still Here, I don't know if I got to tell you about this. It's the story that's set in Brazil in the 70s, and it's about this family where the husband, who is an ex-congressman, gets arrested, and then the whole movie follows the mom, the wife, who has to take care of the 5 children that they had, and also she's trying to keep the memory of her husband alive.
It reminds me of Roma. Have you watched it?
Yeah, I did.
Beautiful movie.
It's a beautiful movie. It's a lot more traumatic, I would even say, but kept in a very light way, which you can see through the cinematography and also through just the sense of the mom, just how she is as a personality. Because one of the themes of her, as this character, is that she's trying to keep her smile on regardless of everything that's happening in her life, and she's so determined. And it's based, by the way, it's based on a true story. Like, this happened. This is something that happened. And this woman, when she was 45, she went back to school, she became a lawyer, and she managed to show the fact that they killed her husband in the camp where they took him.
Wow.
Yeah. It's insane. It's a great movie, and the cinematography is amazing. It's shot almost like a memory. It just feels like a summer's day memory.
It sounds amazing. I didn't get time to watch I'm Still Here, and I really want to
You
go
should
watch it.
You should. It's beautiful, and I urge everyone who's watching this, and if you didn't see I'm Still Here, definitely go and watch it, because it's just it's warm. Even though it's traumatic, it's a warm way to actually understand about the tragic history of Mexico, and also understand a lot about the politics, globally speaking.
So you would say is a more accurate depiction of Mexico.
100%. 100%. It's
Okay.
so beautiful. It's generally so beautiful.
The Substance is a movie I've had mixed feelings about. It's a
Same.
very well made production, a beautiful image,
Yeah.
great cast.
Interesting story.
Yeah,
Like
very interesting
it's
story.
an interesting take on it, the way that they
Okay.
wanted to show it.
And I'm gonna read you this short description. A fading celebrity takes this black market drug, which is a cell replicating substance, which creates a better, younger self. Sounds promising, right?
Sounds very promising. I went into this movie with a lot of expectations because I saw so many reviews before, and I got disappointed by it,
I
unfortunately.
was honestly so excited to see it too.
Yeah.
And it did say it was a horror story. And I was like, how is this a horror story? It doesn't sound like a horror story.
I knew that it was a body horror and I knew like something will like metamorphose and whatever. But I think what disappointed me a lot was just the surface level point that they went with the story. Like instead of having it actually go really deep and just develop it a bit more and even develop the characters a lot more in terms of how they feel and what they feel. I feel like they went more on surface level in terms of the story and then just went crazy with the visuals, which honestly it's never the way to go. If you have a great story, nobody will care about the visuals. If you have a poor story and underdeveloped and you just try to compensate with the visuals, everyone will know.
Yeah, that's why I don't think it deserved its place in the best picture category because it has such a good premise and it was such an opportunity to make a change in the world, especially because there are so many women who are so concerned about their looks and about getting old these days and
Yeah.
taking that opportunity and just throwing it in the bin.
No, definitely. And can we take a second to have some sort of reaction about what happened in the third act? What was that
Yeah,
ending? Why did that
because
happen?
they had this opportunity at this point when the main characters are finally meeting. They were not somehow supposed to meet or allowed to meet in a way, but at this point in the movie they meet face to face and they have the opportunity to have a talk about how they feel about this change and about what they're going through, and they don't, they just kill each other,
Yeah, they
which was bad. Was annoying. I did not want that to happen. I wanted an interaction between them.
yeah.
I wanted something wise to come out of this movie, and they just didn't do it.
I did love the way that they filmed it. I thought it was very interesting. The cuts were really good. I know that the director is also an editor and she filmed everything for the edit, and you can see it in her storyboards as well how every single shot is almost cut like the storyboard, which is fascinating.
I watched the making of this movie. The director is a genius. I will give her that. It was very impressive what they did with everything. I just think they should have worked a little bit more on the
The story.
storyline.
Yeah, yeah. From the point of view of just production and how they structure everything, yeah, obviously that was amazing. But just, I feel like the substance was the perfect example of when filmmakers care more about looks than the substance.
Which, funny enough, it's what this story is about.
Yeah, exactly. Sad, honestly, really sad. What's next?
The last two movies we did not speak about yet are Nickel Boys, which we have not watched, to be
Yeah.
fair. It's the only movie we didn't get to watch yet.
And we're very sad about it.
Yes, but we will watch it.
Although I'm not gonna lie to you, nothing will make me change my mind about the Brutalist.
I mean, it might change your mind. It's a story based on a reform school in Florida, which was notorious for abusive treatments of students. And it's the story of a young African American boy who is sent to Nickel Academy after he is falsely accused of a crime during the 60s,
Oh man.
which is a subject I've explored many times.
Yeah.
And it's
Heartbreaking.
heartbreaking all the time to see how racism was so real, especially in the 60s in
Yeah, in
America. And
America.
especially, I don't know, in the past 100 years in
Yeah.
America. It's still a thing, unfortunately. And it's also a story about friendship. And this boy apparently finds a friend in this school. I really want to see it, and I will. So
It sounds amazing, and I
yeah,
heard a lot of good things about it. Unfortunately, I never got the chance to see it in the cinema. I don't even know if it was here in the cinema.
I'm not sure either.
Yeah.
I don't know. And the next one is Dune.
Dune. Wow. Yes.
I was not a big fan of the first Dune. I found it a bit boring, but the second one was pretty impressive. I loved the appearance of Florence Pugh. I felt like there was a lot of wisdom in Dune's two lines. I loved the love story and, well, I mean, the love triangle that forms in the end. And I'm really curious about the third part.
Yeah, I feel like Dune 2 was. I mean, Dune in general is very political. The books are political, and obviously the films that are made based on the books are political as well. But I found it very interesting to kind of observe how what happens in Dune 2 as a story can be applied so well in our days right now.
It is so much about religion and the role it has in the
Yeah,
political scene.
if I can explain just in a few words what happens, basically Paul Atreides and his mom are taken in by the Fremens, and what Paul does is that he puts everyone together. He manages to make the tribe be one. He falls in love with the Fremen woman as well, but then because he wants to obtain as much power as possible, he goes on this,
Path of becoming the messiah of the
yeah,
Fremen world.
based on a religious myth that they had.
I think he is messiah, honestly.
We're gonna see, but it's interesting because you can see how in the beginning of the film, and you can understand how he says it, that he does not believe in this, but then as the film progresses and he needs to obtain more power, he feels like he needs that power, he just goes more and more and more on this myth and assumes this persona that he knows that people will follow.
Yeah, it's interesting that this movie always has this question in your head. Is
Yeah.
he really messiah
Yeah.
or not?
Does he believe in it or not? And then in the end, he even sacrifices the love that he has for the love of his life. Like you know that she's the love of his life because he wants to obtain even more power to
I don't
avenge his dad.
I don't think it's about power, to be fair. I think it's a lot about his calling.
I don't know what to say because it just feels to me from seeing the movie, and I've seen it too many times, that for him the need to avenge his father is still really big in his mind and in his heart. And from the way that everything progresses and you can see how his mind and how his ideas change, it's not that he believes in the fact that he is the Messiah, but rather that he takes every single box that he needs to check and he makes it happen. Oh, I'm supposed to be able to ride this big worm? Sure, I'll learn how to do that because that will make me the Messiah. And every single little thing like that.
Yeah, but this is also making us think that he kind of is the messiah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like it can be seen from different lenses, definitely. Like you're completely right in that sense. But I feel like for me, mostly at this point until the third one will come up, I saw it more political and more like a chess game rather than an actual prophecy that it is fulfilling.
Very beautiful movie.
Highly recommended.
If you haven't watched Dune 1 and 2, you should definitely watch it.
Yeah, definitely.
So these were our opinions about this year's nominees for Best Picture. We've already told you who we think is going to win.
But if you have your own opinions and your own nominations, please leave them in the comments because we would love to have a look and also, like compare opinions.
And if anybody wants to start the petition about Nosferatu being snubbed, please.
We will sign.
Yeah.
We will sign.
Send that to us. We're very interested in signing. And we'll see you next week with another episode.
Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.